The Ministerial Committee on COVID-19 in South Africa will brief the media at the OR Tambo International Airport this morning. The purpose of the briefing is to inform the public on the repatriation and quarantine of citizens from Wuhan in China. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that 132 South Africans in China will be brought home following the outbreak of COVID-19. The National Defence Force will lead an operation to bring back the SA citizens who want to come back home. Well, for more on what is to be expected at the briefing, we now cross live to our reporter, Criselda Lewis. Hello to you, Criselda. What can be expected to take place over there this morning?
Well, you'll recall, of course, that on Thursday, President Cyril Ramaphosa had announced that he was ordering the evacuation of those more than 100 South African citizens in Wuhan city, which is the epicenter of the coronavirus outbreak. So the inter-ministerial committee will today brief the media on how that evacuation will take place and the subsequent quarantine of them when they arrive back in the country. You'd recall, as part of that statement that was issued by the presidency, they indicated that once those South Africans have arrived in the country, they will be quarantined for 21 days as part of a precautionary measure. So South Africa, of course, maintaining that currently there have been no incidents of positive reporting of the coronavirus in South Africa. So today here we're expecting this interministerial committee to give details about when this evacuation will take place. How will the South Africans be evacuated from Wuhan city back to South Africa? Whether a chartered flight, for example, will be used to bring them back home. And I think one of the pertinent questions as well, Pearl, that need to be answered here today is exactly where these more than 100 South Africans will be quarantined for 21 days as directed by the President. So those are some of the questions that we're expecting to be answered here by this interministerial committee, which is tasked with the evacuation as well as the quarantine of those South Africans who will then return from Wuhan city. So South Africa maintaining until this point that there is no positive report of the coronavirus in the country. But of course, you would know there's massive concern and panic around the world. Nigeria, for example, one of the African countries that has reported a positive case of the coronavirus. South Africa saying at the moment it is putting in all the measures in place to ensure that in any eventuality it is able to deal with the containment of the virus if it does reach our shores. And I think any news that may come from this briefing here today will come as a relief, Pearl, because you'd recall that SABC News has been speaking to quite a number of these South African citizens who are students in China, in Wuhan city for that matter. Some of them have been under lockdown for more than a month now. They've been pleading with the South African government to have them return to their families. We've spoken to the affected families as well who are here in South Africa, and any news that will come from this briefing today will certainly come as a relief for them, while South Africa, of course, maintaining there is no reported positive case of the coronavirus in South Africa. What we'll also need to get an update on, Pearl, you would recall that earlier this week the health department had also indicated that 2 South Africans who were on board that Japanese cruise ship had tested positive for the coronavirus. They're receiving treatment in Japan currently. We'll ask what the condition of those South Africans is, what communication has there been with them so far. So the expectation here this morning, this interministerial committee is expected to comprise of the Health Minister, the Home Affairs Minister, possibly the Department of International Relations as well, the police possibly as well, but we'll certainly get more details about that in the next few moments. But definitely the Department of Health, the Department of International Relations, and as you indicated, the Defence Department as well will be part of this evacuation of those South African citizens from Wuhan city. So a very important briefing to understand what is South Africa's stance, how they will evacuate these South Africans from Wuhan city, what process will be used to ensure the successful repatriation of them from that virus-hit epicenter of the coronavirus. So a very much anticipated media briefing here this morning, whether South Africa will also change its stance on the measures that have been put in place thus far. South Africa also maintaining that the measures it has in place currently are enough to ensure that if the coronavirus does hit South Africa, it has all the necessary precautionary measures in place. You'd know that flights, for example, have not been cancelled from these Asian countries to South Africa. Is South Africa at all going to change its stance as the death toll rises, as well as the infection rate itself is also increasing? So very interesting to hear what this inter-ministerial committee will say this morning about South Africa.
Lewis, that's where we'll have to leave it. Very important questions with regards to that COVID-19, also known as the coronavirus that has been spreading throughout the globe. Questions will be answered today in that media briefing that is set to take place by the Inter-Ministerial Committee on COVID-19. Health